Welcome Karthik Srinivasan to this CTQ Smartcast. I asked Karthik to send me an introduction before this, and he sent me a single line. He said, Karthik is a communication strategy consultant, author of a book on personal branding, Be Social, Building Brand You Online. I think it definitely doesn't do justice to all the varied interests that you have, Karthik. Some of you who are listening to this, watching this, who are not aware, he's a man of many interests, a LinkedIn influencer for many years and a LinkedIn top voice of 2020. Some of the digital assets, if you want to use the branding terminology, are things like the ARR MP3 website, I think back on GeoCities, right? Yeah. The I2FS website, which keeps popping up on multiple WhatsApp groups that I'm part of. And I think this is something that I need to add as an entry for your no word yet asset as well. So welcome, Karthik. Really happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Harish. Thank you for the welcome.
Yeah. So my first question is going to be a very hard one. You talk about personal branding. So what can people who don't have as varied interests as you do to build their own social capital and personal branding?
Yeah. So personal branding has got nothing to do with the number of interests that you have. Even if you have just one interest, that is perfectly fine if you just showcase that interest consistently over a period of time. People would assess. Personal branding is nothing but word of mouth when say, oh, I know him as that. Right now, if you ask about anybody who is not active online or doesn't think about personal branding, people wouldn't say, oh, I know him as what? I don't know. So they will probably need to Google him, Google her, name search her, and then they would come to where they are working on LinkedIn. That's about it. That's where it stops. So their full-time occupation to earn a salary becomes their primary identity, which is perfectly fine. That can also be their identity. That's their most important identity. But it doesn't define who they are as individuals at all. At least if people remember saying, oh, she works in Accenture and she's very interested in Indian classical music. Now we are heading somewhere. There is at least there is a sense of a person or an individual that comes, not just an employee of a company, but employee of that company and who is interested in something. So there it comes to. There is only one interest. Classical music is interest. Employee is just a way to earn salary. That's about it. So it's not about the number of interests that you have. Even if you have just one interest, even if it's a very boring interest, you just need to make it interesting again and again consistently over a period of time so that people start associating with you that interest. That's what matters in personal branding.
Yeah, I think you would have seen, at least I've heard people talk about this, that there is some hesitation about projecting their personal interests and hobbies. It seems like you need to have these two different personas, two different identities. So why does that really happen? Has that been discouraged? Do you think employers have discouraged people to do that? Why does that even happen to start with?
It's not just employees, it's actually the society, because we have been told right in the Bhagavad Gita, do your duty and don't expect results, which is true, which is perfectly fine. But not expecting results doesn't mean that you actually try to build your brand. And the biggest problem there is most people conflate brand building or personal brand building to talking about oneself. And then they go, how much can I talk about myself? It's very embarrassing. I'm not going to, it seems so vain and pointless. And what will people think of me when I talk about myself? That's the biggest misnomer there, because people assume that personal branding equals talking about yourself. But that's just a failure of imagination. Suppose, for instance, if you are in the financial sector, you're working in the financial sector, you work with the tax planning and whatever it is. The thing is, I'm not good at all those things at all. So that's what I'm using as an example. If you're that, and if you build your brand consistently, not on the work that you're doing, which needs to be important for your clients or your partners and vendors, but not for the outside world, because they don't do business with you directly. But if you have an opinion, if you share perspectives on what's happening in the tax planning industry overall in India and the world, if you share a perspective, you're not talking about yourself, you're talking about your thinking process, which is very different from what actual work that you're doing. I worked with this client and saved him so much money. That is an actual work that you're doing. You're not talking about that. You're talking about, I believe this new law about tax planning is very good or very bad or not very interesting or very disappointing because of so and so reason. not about your work at all, but about your work industry, about the category that you operate in. That is where you need to elevate the kind of conversations and perspectives that you're sharing online, moving away from yourself and your own work. You also need to talk about your own work and yourself, but that's just probably once or twice occasionally. The larger component is about the area that you're interested in. There you talk about more. So it's not personal branding for your specific work, it's personal branding for your thinking style and thinking process. That takes you away from, I, this is what I do, this is me. And then you don't need to feel embarrassed at all. You're still doing personal branding, but you're just showcasing how you think. That's what matters, not how you do specific individual piece of work. That's where the problem is. Most people conflate this with that and saying, no, it seems so vain. I'm not going to do that at all. Just get out of that rut, it will become much better.
Right. When you were saying this, one thing struck me, Karthik. You've done this excellent comparison in your book about the offline and the real world and the online world. So when you were saying this, I was just thinking of, say, I was imagining somebody from the financial sector, an accountant or someone. Now, the CA that I work with doesn't go around talking about his work. But when asked a question, he has very great insights on how accounting laws should be framed and
Yes.
what else, right? So is that also contributing to this lack of putting out your thoughts as a, if not a subject matter expert, somebody who's thinking, because those prompts are not there. I'm not asking my CA, what do you think about this? So he is not opening up himself. Is that true? Do you think that's the case?
Okay, it is true. It is true. It is true. Since there is no prompts, you need to create those own prompts in your mind and then do it. And then here, I probably need to explain the three layers of why personal branding.
Right.
The first layer of your connections in your life are people that are immediate to you, your family, your close friends away from work. That's the first layer. That is layer number one. Layer number two is your work layer, your colleagues, your peers in the industry that you occasionally meet in events and etc. That's second layer. Third layer is rest of the world. This includes everybody that you don't know directly. They probably know you or they have no clue who you are at all. The entire world, media, people in the media space like journalists, editors, and etc. And then just random people. That's the third world. Now, your personal branding effort is not for layer one or even layer two. It's half of layer two, but not fully layer two. That's your work layer. There are even peers in other companies that may not know you. So it's half of layer two. Your personal branding effort is towards the second half of layer two and fully layer three. That's where the effort is, not for this. This they already know, and you have a reasonably frequent communication with them very often. You, in fact, use social networking for these two layers, not three. This first and second half of the second layer, you use social networking. And social networking is very different from social media. Social networking is you connect with people you already know, they know you, you know them. So WhatsApp is social networking, even though people say go out of WhatsApp and go to Signal these days. That's a very debatable kind of thing. We are all on WhatsApp. We are not going anywhere at all. We believe that unless you drop off internet, there is no privacy. So it's perfectly fine. We'll be on WhatsApp. So WhatsApp and even things like Facebook Messenger or Twitter DM, they are social networking. You network with people. But for this half of second and third one, you need social media, which is a broadcast medium. It's like monkey bar. You can only talk one way. The other side, you can hear if you want to, but whether you want to engage or not is your choice. You literally stand on the top of your building with a megaphone and talk to the world. That's what, that's where there is no prompt. Nobody is asking you saying, hey, what do you think about this new tax law? Nobody is asking. You need to ask that question yourself and say, yes, out of this millions of people in this world, at least 10 people would be interested in what I'm saying. Talk about it. That's about it. So you need to create your own prompts, answer it. The problem happens is most people try to do it once or twice. They don't see a major reaction to that saying one person likes and one of my friends likes and my wife likes that post. That's about it. And said, yeah, who bothers? Nobody does. The trick is to do it consistently again and again. Only then it will build over a period of time. It's not about the number that gathers. It's about the kind of people. There is a interesting quip in one of my, not one of my, the favorite book that it's actually The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where the author says, how do you fly? The trick in flying is to jump and not fall off. You just keep on jumping and just jump. That's called flight, basically. He phrases it differently, right. But that's the thing. The trick is to continue doing it. and not worry about, I've got million followers now, the whole world knows me. Don't worry about that at all. Just be at it consistently. It will work at the end of it, but you need to be consistent. That's the point.
Correct. Yeah. I think the hummingbird must have definitely read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the
Exactly.
Galaxy.
It just keeps this. That's nothing else. Just continue doing it. That's it. Stay on. Stay on
laws of
air.
defying laws of physics.
Exactly. Correct. Correct.
Yeah. Another interesting thing that has been coming up these days is people are being expected to have something of a brand even within companies,
Yep.
especially with,
Yep.
say, the corporate headquarters in the tech industry, right? Headquarters are in San Francisco. That's where all the decisions are taken in terms of promotions and stuff like that. Here you have a great architect, but no one outside his or her close group actually knows how great this person is. And then this person is passed on when it comes to their promotions because nobody knows about how good this person is. And that's where then there's this demand that, oh, you need to be more visible.
Yeah.
And then these people are really struggling. And we've seen this across roles, across companies, across levels. So do you see this becoming more of an obvious problem and people trying to do something about it for these?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely, yes. That's actually called employee advocacy.
Right.
In some ways, from the HR point of view, it's called employee advocacy, even though the objective of employee advocacy is slightly different. There, the objective is how can we use employees as brand ambassadors and then
Right.
use employees' personal voice on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram as the brand's communication channel also. So that's employee advocacy. But as you have said, there is also a need from senior roles in various places to be more visible, at least on LinkedIn. Most people have realized saying LinkedIn is a good enough place to build your professional personal brand, not necessarily personal brand, professional personal brand, and reasonably be active on LinkedIn. The question then comes in, what does be reasonably active mean? What kind of content I'm supposed to share? What kind of content would actually accentuate both my own brand and my company's brand without making me sound like a brand brochure? I need to be independent and also the brand should gain, I should also gain. So that's where it comes. A third layer, which is interesting because I do a lot of corporate workshops for senior professionals, and quite a few of those workshops are actually kickstarted by the HR team. And some of the HR team very honestly tell me, saying these people are 45 plus in terms of age groups, and they will be let go at some point. So we want them to actually create a kind of pipeline for them. They can actually think about their brand more consciously because they are 45 plus, 50 plus. Chances are that they won't get the same kind of package wherever they go next time. So they have to become their independent self. They have to do something. So we are actually creating these kind of workshops for them to start thinking about it, which is sad to hear in one way, but which is also good that at least they're not being dropped off the sky one day and they are actually eased into that kind of just a harsh reality that there is ageism in the industry. You can't do anything about it at all. And that's what's happening. So that's the third reason why there is demand for building personal brands, at least at the senior level.
And should people be seeing it differently, this internal branding within a company from how you would treat, say, external branding?
Not necessarily at all, because in my workshops also, when I try to explain how to define your own personal brand, it is always a combination of your personal and professional self. It's not just one over the other or just pick one. And for instance, if you're interested in, for instance, a coin collection, and who collects coins these days, that's a different point. But if you're still interested in coin collection, that should not be your only the kind of things that you're actually projecting online. That's just one facet of you as an individual. It needs to be more well-rounded in terms of a definition, saying I'm interested in this, my work interest is this, and my casual interest is this. At least there are three elements that are coming. So you have three areas to play around with content more frequently. If you just keep coins, then you have only one. You would probably be only active on Instagram and no other place at all. You can't talk about coin collection in any professional sense on LinkedIn, so it doesn't even make sense unless you are a professional coin collector, which doesn't make any sense, which is probably very far and few.
Right.
So it's always a combination of things. If you just focus only on one thing and go deep into that, you will, which is perfectly fine, which is good, but it won't help from a professional point of view. That's it.
Right, right. One more thing that struck me, Karthik, was that the process of creation of these so-called branding assets, whether you call it a podcast or a blog or a newsletter, has been democratized a lot. It was earlier as well, but even now it has been democratized. So ideally, you should see a glut of content. In fact, glut of bad content as well.
Yep.
But if you just do a dipstick survey among corporate professionals, I don't know of too many people, or it is they are shying away from talking about something that they're doing. So what explains this paradox then? There is a lot of content out there,
Correct.
but when you talk to these corporate professionals, they aren't creating that content. So
Correct.
why is this paradox?
The paradox is possibly because people don't start in the right space. The starting is a brand definition. You
Right.
need to define what you want people to think you as, or what people to take away about who this person is. Who is Harish? They need to have one line. It's almost like an elevator pitch. That is the starting point. And then you build that elevator pitch into a brand definition saying, Harish is this. He needs to be known for one, two, three, four, five. That's the brand definition. Once you set the brand definition, you need to use that as a guideline to work towards specific set of content. The problem starts is that people know that they need to have a brand. They sit in front of a new post on LinkedIn saying that's a problem. And they just think whatever it comes to their mind. It is not like that at all. The process is you need to have the post ready in your mind at least 1 week before you post it. Because every single post advertises who you are. And if you don't worry about what is it advertising about you, then you will just impulsively write something. It doesn't add up to something. Maybe chances are, if you just think about it for 5 minutes and you got a great post, it goes viral. But you can't replicate it again and again. It's just a fluke. You can't do it again and again. So it will be like one big thing and people remember you and then they forget all about you. Consistency is what matters. Not just one big blip. Consistency is what matters.
Yeah. So at this point, I think I'm going to take a small pause because we're going to ask you a quiz question. I choose to think we love our quizzing. And just to make sure that there's something at stake, you will actually win a prize for every question that you get. I have two questions for today's session. Both are some way very closely related to you as well. And the prize is you get a slot in one of our CTQ compound batches. That's what is at stake. Okay. So this is the first question. Should probably be easy for you. Who is supposed to be the first person to have bought a Macintosh in Europe?
Wow. Mac in Europe. Is it Douglas Adams?
It is Douglas Adams.
I thought so. Asking me that question, that should be the
Yes.
answer. I think. Yeah. He was a pioneer. I really miss him on Twitter. He would have been a
Yes.
superstar on Twitter. Poor guy died long before Twitter, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's good.
Yeah. Great answer there, Karthik. So you got your one discount code for the CTQ compound. So let's move to the next section. We talked about building a personal brand and also getting down to the actual nuts and bolts of posting and stuff. How much do you think is it a problem for people with building a habit or routine, right? It's a lot of people sign up for these online courses, but very few actually complete them. Like you said, you see a lot of people starting a blog or a newsletter. They expect it to go viral. I don't know what that really, what's the definition of that virality, but they expect that, want that, they don't get it, and they probably stop it. So is there, and we know that the brand is going to be built when you are consistent about it. So is it more of a mindset problem of inability to stick to habits? This is what, Jan 13th. A lot of New Year resolutions would have got broken by now.
Correct.
So is that a bigger challenge than even thinking about the brand identity?
Absolutely, yes. But brand identity is first because people
Correct.
don't think about it. And the fact that all these channels are freely available to them. LinkedIn is free, Facebook is free, Twitter is free, everything is free. It's right at their disposal. So they can easily dip into it occasionally when they get time. But then they think saying, what do I post? What do I post? They have no clue. So that's that. So the fact is the tools are with them, with everybody. Tools are just there to be exploited. They can be badly exploited or well exploited. That's up to them. So the brand definition is important to guide them towards the right direction. But once the guidance is done, you need to stick to it. The biggest or the best analogy that I can give is you spoke about resolutions. Most people's New Year resolutions are around physical health, usually hitting the gym, or you pay the gym for 12 months, so that guilt itself will keep you going to the gym every day or something, or you actually sign up to cultivate or something like that, whatever you do. Most people resolutions like that. Suppose if you want to skull to your body. That's your resolution. And then you hit the gym on Jan 1. Very honestly, you do that. By the time you reach Jan 22, if you start looking at your biceps, will it be bulging? It won't be bulging because it's just 22 days. Nothing would have worked. You have to look at it in October or November if you have been consistent enough over a period. Then there will be some kind of response which you don't need to look. Others will look and tell you, hey, what changed, man? You've been very consistent in the gym, is it? People will notice it. But a personal branding is exactly like that. If you are not consistent with that, it won't show up at all. You need to just persist and go on and on with it. After a point, people will talk about, hey, I read that post about you. And then you will know, my God, this is working. It's not that millions of people will tell you, hey, I read that post about you. That one person saying matters because that one random person had no clue who you are and you had no clue who that person is. But suddenly they are saying, I read the post. What do you think about this? That's where it works. It's exactly like health. If you don't put that effort, nothing will show up. If you put that effort, everything will show up.
Yeah, in fact, we talked about CTQ compounds earlier, the prize that you won. So it was built around this whole notion of compounding interest, and even what Scott Adams keeps talking about, systems versus goals, right?
Yes,
You mentioned
yes.
that in your book as well. It's about reading that we started with. So we ourselves internally have been reading since for the last 1,000+ days. Actually, it started on Jan 1st, 2018, and we've completed 3 years plus of reading every day. Earlier we were reading only book summaries. Now we have expanded to other things. Now we have opened it up as a retail product for people, and they now treat it as a curiosity diet. 15 minutes of reading every day. We make sure that you get something interesting. Your time is going to be spent. We understand the power of this compounding, doing it every day, and also the design of routines and habits that will ensure that it is something which can be sustained. So have you designed or developed any routines for yourself which help you stay the course this way?
Oh, obviously, that's the whole point actually, because I strongly suggest, even in my workshop corporate, I suggest that yes, your brand definition is fine, your tools are with you, everything is there, but unless you build a daily habit of it, it will just fall through the cracks. You won't do anything at all. For the daily habit, I strongly tell them that 90% of your work is away from people. It is not in front of people, it's away from your people. It is your reading, researching, assimilating, articulating in your own head, cross questioning your own thoughts. Is it right? Is it wrong? Am I on the right track? Am I just getting the gist of it right? Do I need to read more? That is what's happening in the background. People don't see that at all. What they see is only 10%. You finally share something. And based on the 10%, they form a perception about who this individual is. But the 90% work will actually impact the 10% based on which your perception gets better. There is a quote in Scott Adams' book, the more you can know. It is so very true. I strongly suggest to people you need to read 10x more than what you share. Unless you read the 10x more, you won't be able to connect the dots and understand what you're writing. If you don't read, you will just look at a blank new post and then write whatever comes in your mind and just vomit it impulsively. There is no point in it at all. You can try it, of course. I mean, there is a free country, you can try it, but there's no point. You're not building towards something. I strongly focus on reading, researching, and articulating more, and much less on the sharing part. I mean, sharing part is important. How you articulate the share, how you frame it, what is the central point, everything is important. But before that is a research part. That is very crucial. And that research will come only when you put time. And for that, you need to build content pipelines that come to you. You don't go to internet and say, where do I search for this information? Because internet is a bottomless pit. You can get lost in it. That's the point. That's the problem. There are various ways that you can build content pipelines. So basically, for instance, one of the things I strongly recommend is newspapers. If you subscribe to at least 10 different newspapers, they're not very expensive, thankfully. If you subscribe to 10 different newspapers, you get 10 various points of view on the same topic, which is very valuable. And the biggest advantage of newspapers are they are not unidimensional in one topic. They actually cover whatever happened in the world in the last 24 hours in a whole wide spectrum. So you can actually skim on the headlines and then go, oh, this happened. You don't need to actually buy hard them, but it will stay in your mind in the backdrop. And when you see something else later after 10 days, you can connect the dots saying, hey, I saw that ad of this happening, connect the dots. You're able to connect the dots, which nobody else would be because you are just skimming the newspaper. So newspaper is one. I still swear by RSS feeds. RSS feeds really work well. I use Feedly. which is a free RSS tool reader. It works very well. Google keyword alerts. It is a lot of spam. There is a lot of problem in terms of filter to noise ratio, but still it keeps me alert on some of the topics and some of the brands that I am tracking. And Twitter lists work very well also. I put them in a list, separate list, and track only them. And email newsletters. There are a lot of newsletters that are very focused and topic centric, and the news comes to you. You don't need to go in search of it and waste time. It comes to you every day. So these are the content pipelines that I built. And whenever I want to research something, I just go to my own pipelines. I don't start on a blank slate saying, what do I research about? It's right here. I make notes here and there, and that helps me look at saying, what do I write about? Okay, I got about 10 different notes to research this more, think about this more, cross question yourself more, and then get to the point and write something. So you need to build a content pipeline for even the habits to kick in. Habits won't kick in automatically. You need to enable yourself to get into that habit, ideally.
It's about building that right environment for those systems to stick. In fact, when you were talking, I was reminded of R.K. Lakshman's quote about how he used to come up with the common man cartoons, right? He would just read the newspaper and it would strike.
Correct. Our news is full of that kind of thoughts anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, even Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister is also, the premise is very similar. They didn't have to really cook up anything. They could just the debates in the parliament and come up with these sketches. What about any software tools? Do you recommend people use any tools for, say, scheduling? You talked about RSS feeds and Google alerts. What about some of these so-called low-level tasks like scheduling? You may not have a rich, fertile day every day. One day is very good. So do you save some of that for a dry day?
I generally don't use any scheduling. I've tried all the tools. I've tried tools like Buffer and everything. I've tried the paid version, free version, and quite a few of the scheduling tools. Also, I've tried most of them. Hootsuite, paid version, Hootsuite, free version. All this I've tried anyway. But I'm not a big fan of scheduling at all. I stick to my time. I keep an alarm. If I'm not able to do it, I'll just do it later. But I will do it manually myself. Because I need to track, is there any click through? Is there any call to action happening? Do I need to repeat it? So I don't automate any of the process. I do it manually so that I'm completely on top of them. In terms of tools, some of the lowest level tools that help me is Google Keep. The Google Keep notes that actually sync between my Mac and my phone, because I use an Android phone. It is my literally everything, because whenever I read, I make a quick note of, this thought sounds interesting. This stands out. I need to research more about it later. I seem to have read something about this 10 days ago. I need to look up on that. I just make those notes here and there. There are so many notes in my Google Keep notes. Whenever I want to get some inspiration to what do I write about, I just go there and there are 100 things waiting for me to explore more. Pick one, research, and there is something to it. Google Keep is literally my only tool that I use extensively.
Yeah, I have been experimenting with Evernote for some time. I've been trying to integrate
same kind of tool.
But again, the slight digression. So the idea of this personal information management, right? It's becoming a beast of its own, right? There's so much of information, so many thoughts, so many ideas, so many comments that you want to track, and you want to be in a position where you can retrieve them. So do you also use physical notes, pen and paper, or everything is on Google Keep?
I used to use a Google draft message on Gmail draft message. But I figured the hard way that if you delete a Gmail draft message, it doesn't go to the trash. It gets completely vaporized out of the internet. You can't retrieve it at all. So I stopped using it and then moved to Google Keep safely.
Thanks for this tip. I didn't know this. I'm sure it will be useful for at least one.
It is very important. Yeah, it's a big deal actually, because I lost something very valuable because I used to keep everything on a Google draft mail, Gmail draft. I just deleted it by mistake. I didn't even know I deleted it. I go there again, it's not there. I go to trash, it's not there. Then I read online, it just evaporates out of the internet. Why? I have no clue at all.
Yeah. A slightly, again, a different question here, Karthik. Some people feel, they say, and it might be very genuine also, that their interests keep changing, right? Some people's interests are all about their work. If you talk to, say, founders, entrepreneurs, they'll probably be living and breathing their product, their startup. So what's your advice to such people? There is this tendency or this fear that, we might end up being very boring because we don't have those many interests, like how we started the conversation. I have only one interest. So what's your advice to such people?
Advice is, it's a very big world. If you pre-assume with a preconceived notion saying my interest talking about only my products will be boring to the world, also make the assumption that there will be enough people in the world who might not see it as boring. For instance, take an example of, say, Manu Kumar Jain. You notice any of his posts on any of the platforms, it's always about Xiaomi, 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 Xiaomi. There is nothing else. Even when he's sharing a photo from Goa where he's vacationing with his family and his dog, it says, here is, I am in Goa, I am enjoying the beach, and my dog is playing with a frisbee. And by the way, this photo has been taken by Xiaomi's Mi 10, whatever phone, etc. So you're wondering, is he trying to advertise his new phone, or is he talking about his vacation at all? But that's his personality. His personality is so closely tied to who he is from a company point of view. And he is his company, the company is him in India. You cannot remove that. They are just together one, quite literally. But he doesn't worry about saying, if I talk too much about Xiaomi, would I become a brand brochure? Of course, he's a brand brochure to me. To hundreds of other people, people think, oh wow, I get to know so much about Xiaomi from him. So it's perfectly fine. It doesn't matter what I think or few people think is boring. It could be half the world, but there is another half of the world who won't think you're boring. At least try to give them the content. Why try to bother about people who think you're boring? Move away from them and go to people that think that you're interesting. Keep at it. That's it.
A lot of these things, as we keep unpacking your answers, it's all about mindsets, right? A lot of these internal censor board that we have, which, whether it's the imposter syndrome or even with something like retweeting content, resharing content, you feel you've put out something and some people have this feeling of guilt that, oh, am I actually less creative by not posting something again? So again, your thoughts on that. Is that something that people suffer from?
Yeah, in fact, that's precisely my post about today. There is a post that I've written about in my blog. That's the topic today because I was thinking about how often do you see people repeating their content? Large media groups do that. For instance, if you follow the Times of India handle or the ET handle on Twitter or any other platform, they do for example, the kind of content they've spent a lot of time researching, they actually repeat it multiple times. Take a TV news channel. I've not watched TV news channel in probably 1 or 2 years at all. But I'm at least the time when I used to watch them, they used to repeat their programs very often. Even the headlines, they keep repeating every 1 hour. By the end of 3 hours, you're bored with the headlines already, and you know them by heart. They do that. But individuals, they think if I repeat it, would people think I'm desperate? Why am I repeating? But that's also a function of where they are repeating it, the kind of platforms they're repeating it. For instance, today's blog post was about three specific things that I did not want to do, but I eventually learned that I can do it without making it sound desperate. First is repeating content. The point is, if you keep repeating content on Facebook and LinkedIn, people would probably think you are a dork. You're doing it again and again, because the chances of your first content being seen by a lot of people is very high. They are slow timelines. Time moves very slowly on a LinkedIn or a Facebook timeline. On Twitter, it's a blazing fast timeline. What happens now in this minute, the whole world changes in 2 minutes. So if you repeat on Twitter 4 times what you have written, even if people see it already, they have seen and they are repeating it, nobody cares because things move fast. On LinkedIn, if you repeat, people think, why is this guy repeating the content again and again? Might be a question. But you can still argue saying, I don't care about what people think of me on LinkedIn when I repeat, I will repeat it. For instance, I mean, like Virgin's head, Branson, repeats his content very often. He just changes the line and repeats the content very often. If he can do it, we are normal mortals, ordinary souls. We can do it 10 times more than him. What's the reason for him doing it? He's trying to build a personal brand. He already has a personal brand offline, but he's trying to do it on LinkedIn. So he does it. So it's perfectly fine. So repeating is totally fine, no problem at all. The only mindset is we think, char log kya sochenge? That's what we go back. We are Indians, we always go back to, oh, char log kya sochenge? That's the problem. If we go past it, we can probably conquer the world. Of course, these are actually hacks. These are not the legitimate way to build a brand. These are not the most credible way to build a brand. Some people would think that you are repeating it, you are desperate, but if the content is good enough, they will probably forgive you saying, yeah, you're repeating it. But by the time the second time happened, that's when I saw it first and it worked. I've actually tracked this. When I actually tried repeating it, I've tracked the first time I wrote something in the morning, I shared it, how many people clicked on it through a bit.ly link. When I reshared it in the afternoon just before lunch, how many people clicked? When I reshare it in the evening at around 5 or 6, how many people clicked? And then at night I do that. I see that the second or third is probably working much better than the first. So there is genuine use or purpose in repeating it. That's why I do it. Initially, people used to question me saying, "You are repeating your own content, you are repeating your own content." But now I don't think anybody cares. If I probably start doing it on LinkedIn, a fresh set of people might ask me. But I just need to let go of saying that's not the point. The point is the new people that will see the content afresh. They are the point, not the people who have already seen the content. They can say anything they want as long as they get value the first time or second time. That should be good enough.
Right. The content actually deserves that extra audience, which you're
According to
denying.
you,
If you
I mean, in
don't,
your
right?
own head, in your
Yeah,
own head,
yeah.
because you put the research to it. Of course,
Correct,
if you
correct.
don't promote your content, who else will? That's the
Right,
point.
right. Yeah. In fact, I don't remember the movie for which A.R. Rahman said this once. I think he had this album in Tamil, and he said the movie did very badly in Tamil. This deserves a bigger audience, and he used the same tunes in Hindi.
There are so many like that, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. A slight digression here again, Karthik. What about other languages, especially in a country like India? And I'm going to quote a more personal example. So, my father is a great raconteur. He tells a lot of stories, and he has that, he sniffs out stories in his life and then he tells them in a very interesting, engaging manner. So, when he retired from government service, I introduced him to the world of blogging and all of that. I said, why don't you blog? So he used to start blogging. He started blogging and he was writing in English. And then he said, it's just me, Ramanand, and my sister who used to read his blog posts. So then he said, I don't want to, put in so much of effort for just three readers. He switched to Telugu. And he's now become like a Telugu internet celebrity, writing his takes on different things. He'll, whatever comes to mind, he'll see an umbrella and he'll write something about an umbrella or something that happened to him. And he has fans from all over the world now. Some of his blog posts have been plagiarized into Telugu
My
serial
God. He has
episodes.
truly arrived then. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So he says this is working for me, and he hardly talks about his government service. It's more about life in general. But he has now formed a brand of his own. I can see that. I've seen that develop over the last 10, 15 years. So is that something which should even be considered, looking at an alternate language medium for corporate professionals, or should we all be thinking only English first?
Not necessarily at all, not English at all. There is a dearth of good quality content in Indian regional languages, whether it's Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada, it doesn't matter what language. There is a dearth. Initially, the dearth was in a way forced by the lack of keyboards available for those languages initially, long
Correct.
ago. Now, most languages, Indian Indic languages, there are keyboards. Even the Google keyboard itself, it's there. You can type in very easily. But forget keyboard. You got video now. You can just talk in the language very frequently. You don't need to type anything at all. Just talk and make a video, live video, simple. But even then, there is a dearth of languages. The all the language content is probably clubbed under a forward in WhatsApp, wherever, or probably in Facebook and everywhere. You don't see much on places like Twitter or Instagram or even LinkedIn kind of stuff. But if you look at some of the Latin American handles on LinkedIn, they speak only in their language. They don't care
Correct.
about English at all. You need to use C translation to understand what they are saying. If you see some of the German handles on LinkedIn, they speak only in German. They don't speak anything. And then if you go to Korea and everything, no English at all. They don't care. They obviously forcefully don't care. They write in their own language and the world has to translate and understand it because they come to this content. We don't do that very often, partly because most of the metro dwellers in India have stopped even thinking in their own mother tongue. Even if we want to, we can't. We don't find the right words to fit in, and English comes more, which is not bad anyway. It's not bad or good. It's
Right.
just the way we have evolved, unfortunately. I strongly believe that we need to stick to our mother tongue, understand it, learn it, and try to actually practice it somehow. But the practical opportunities are much, much lesser. I love Tamil, which is actually my mother tongue. And I'm thankful that I can read, speak, and write in Tamil, but I can't think in Tamil, which is the most important part. I want to think, but I just can't think at all. The words flow better in English. The right words flow better in English. I need to strain my thoughts to get the right words in Tamil. I do get it, but it's a process. It's a very laborious process, and it takes more time. English just flows automatically. My mind just flows in English. In Tamil, I have to consciously think, saying right word, wrong word, is there a better word? I need to juggle with all that like a child learning the language for the first time. But if you are comfortable in that language as a professional, go ahead and put your thoughts in that language. The kind of audience you will suddenly discover, it's innumerable, because India is a vast country. Each state is very large with a lot of people. So it's a huge opportunity, and not many people are exploring it or exploiting it. They are going with the flow with English as a default. Why can't you be the why can't you be the Tamil international techie? The Tamil is just the identity because you are from that state, but you are an international techie working in coding and whatever it is, and you always share your opinions on everything that's happening in the world in Tamil on LinkedIn. You would probably be one of the very few doing it, and you would be a standout because of that. So there is no issues on that at all. We need to do it more often, actually.
We need to be the purple cows.
Absolutely, yes, totally.
And what about the need to amplify content for personal branding? And political parties of all shades will have dedicated followers. Brands will pay agencies. They will have bots. Even though Apple has never actually posted a tweet, their promoted tweets are there all over everyone's
Correct.
timelines, right? But most individuals will not have a troll army of their own. So is that a problem? Should people even be bothered about the need to amplify or the lack of resources to amplify?
Most people have the, because online amplification doesn't take much money. It's not like a front page ad or a page ad that you take in Times of India at all. It's online ad.
Right.
You can boost or promote a post on LinkedIn. You can boost, not LinkedIn, but you can boost it on Insta, Facebook, and even Twitter. It's fairly easy to do that. But from a personal brand building point of view, while you can do that and it's really available to anybody and everybody, it's not even expensive these days. While you do that, the perception when somebody sees a promoted blog post from an individual, which is not a company or whatever, is that they are trying too hard, which is not bad at all. Let them think they are trying too hard. As long as the content is valuable, let them think trying too hard. But it is a possibility that they will think, saying it's just a blog post, and what does he gain out of it? And he's trying to promote it in my timeline. That's the kind of thinking that usually happens. If you go past that thinking, saying what will people think? Again, what will those poor people think? Please go ahead and promote it. I considered it, but I dropped that idea because I didn't want that hack level of visibility. I wanted visibility and personal brand based on consistency of effort. So it's not just a one-off promoting and get something and then build an audience, but just be at it. I don't want millions of followers. Even 100 followers is good enough for me, but they stick to me because I deliver value consistently over a period of time, and I need to work hard towards that. That's my approach. But if your approach is you want a big bang, you want to promote it, the tools are available for everybody these days. It's very easy, fairly cheap. Please go ahead and do it. There is no harm in it at all. If you go past what will people think.
Right, right. And there's always this danger of if you have a strong opinion on something, there's always this danger. There's something lurking around is the fear that people have. And I think I have actually quoted this example of yours to a few people already, where I remember you were, posting about something about HDFC. I think it was the online banking interface. You said that I am an HDFC customer and I'll continue to be an HDFC customer, but this is a problem that you need to fix. And you were at it for a few months, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Yes. And it never felt as if a rude complaint or it was the kindest user complaint that you could have come across. But the fact that it was persistent was enough for people like us who is neither an HDFC client or like closely working with you to know that something is wrong and you are being wronged there, right? So how do you do that, and your experience with that whole campaign, if I were to call it one, talk about that as well.
Yeah. So this spectrum of to hate is a very long line. There are no two linears, no two ends. I love it and I hate it. There is a lot of between points, in between points that most people don't explore at all. Suppose if I am trying, for instance, if you take the latest case that everybody is talking about in the world of marketing, it's the brand of soap called Sebamed, which has gone against Dove, Pierce, and that has taken the names and etc. If I write about it saying Sebamed did right by actually going after this because of so and so reason, that doesn't mean that I'm a big fan of Sebamed and I hate Dove, Pierce, and etc. It doesn't mean that at all. So I need to bring that in words also. I can't just leave it and then write it and saying people will assume saying I'm not taking only Sebamed side. I need to specify and articulate it in specific words, saying what Sebamed is doing is just one way to get your attention by being disruptive. Dove is perfectly fine. Pierce is good. We have been buying those products for so long. It's not as if one Sebamed said everything is bad at all. So there is a whole spectrum of I don't like, I like this, plus I like this, I hate this, plus I love this. There is a lot of ifs and buts possibilities. That campaign with the campaign that I ran over for HDFC is precisely that. I'm still a customer. I've been a customer for maybe 2 decades. Like Airtel, I've been with them for 2 decades. I've had my share of problems with them, and I had my share of very smooth working with everything. Lot, I mean, my home loans are from HDFC, car loans are HDFC, everything. My locker is HDFC, everything is HDFC. I'm not going to move out of them at all because of that one small transgression. It is not a transgression that is a make or break. If it is a make or break, I will make that announcement saying, this is big, guys. I'm going to completely quit this. But that was a transgression. It was wrong. It was actually an opt out campaign, which should have been opt in. It's a very basic mistake. And I understand why they did it. They have their numbers, they have their targets. It's just unscrupulous way of doing business. But the more unscrupulous they are, their share price keeps going up. I have no clue what is that weird correlation between them. So you cannot shake them at all. Unless the share price shakes, you cannot shake with one person saying the same thing for 6 months. But the point is, it actually gathered so much momentum because I was not antagonistic to HDFC. I was saying it's perfectly fine. HDFC is a good bank. This one thing is a problem. That's about it. Can they please look at it? And I was trying to be as polite as possible, no rude words. Again and again saying please. I was just begging them to do something. I don't think they have done anything at all. They probably continue with the same opt-out process, unfortunately. But that's their prerogative. I'm not going to change my life because of that.
And are different platforms or apps amenable for different kinds of discussions? In a tweet with 280 characters, you're probably not going to be able to introduce those nuances that you can in a slightly longer blog post. And before people realize that, yes, there is a subtext to it, they will already form their opinion based on tweet number one. So what do you recommend to people on how to use different platforms for different kinds of content pieces?
Content. There is no thumb rule, there is no golden rule or yardstick saying this is better, that is better. Content is just content. I consciously write a much longer post in my blog post because I have all the liberty to write any longer kind of stuff. Twitter forces you to 280 characters, and LinkedIn forces you to 1299 characters on a timeline. On a pulse post, you can do a much longer post, etc. But the basic assumption is that people want to stick to their timeline. They don't want to go out of their timeline. On Twitter, that tweet, if it's a thread, they will read everything in their own timeline because they're inside an app and they are just scrolling up, up, and up. And if they find something that breaks that flow of scrolling up, click here to go there and etc., they pause, they hesitate, saying, I'm very comfortable inside my scrolling. Why do I click this at all? Unless you give a very compelling reason with the initial hook saying, do you know this is happening? Click here. It can't be a clickbait either. It has to be something meaningful and interesting. And then they will click and then go on. Same thing with LinkedIn, same thing with Facebook, where you have a much longer canvas to create that kind of surprise elements to make them click here, compelling version. Twitter gives you a small canvas. Instagram is the biggest problem. You can't even add a link. It has to be link in my bio. So it's very complicated. So you need to use an image to create that kind of hook. But it is up to you basically. So for instance, you would not want to drive people to a blog at all. You would want to tell people whatever it is in those platforms. So you just break down into a Twitter thread, you write it on LinkedIn in one post and comment, you write the whole thing. On Facebook, you write a post on Facebook, you can do anything you want. It's not a blog at all. It's basically what works for you. But just think about people wanting to stick to their timelines and not go out of the comfort of their timeline. If you have to assume that as default, you would probably work your way around much better.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a very useful way of looking at things. Let's take a pause here and go for the next quiz question. The film Fantoosh, when he heard the song "Ay Meri Topi Palat Ke Aa," his first reaction was, "My God, that's my tune." He accused the music director of flicking his tune, and the music director agreed. So, who are the two people in question here?
Good question. I don't even remember watching Fantoosh in a very long time.
Devanand Starer.
Oh, Devan started.
Must be 50s. In fact, I kept that song on YouTube on pause if you want to hear. It won't help you.
Yeah, I know, it won't help me. I'm just thinking it could be either the senior Burman or the junior Burman, one of S.T. Burman, R.D. Burman types, maybe. I'm just guessing.
Okay, so you've actually got both the answers right. So this was, so the music director is S.D. Burman. So when S.D. Brought R.D. Burman from Calcutta, where he was with his grandmother for some time, to Bombay, he said, what do you want to do? You're not doing well in studies and all that. And he said, I want to compose music. So he composed some pieces and everyone forgot about them. And then one day, R.D. Burman is watching Fantush and he says, oh my God, that is my tune. He wrote and he said, you have stolen my tune. And S.D. said, yes, I did. So I thought this is something like a reverse I2FS kind of a question.
Exactly, it is reverse. But between them, they are both brilliant. Both the father and son,
yes,
they are amazing. They are incredible, both of them. Seriously.
Yeah. Again, referring to my father that we spoke of earlier, he was using the word bhakt for me with R.D. Burman much before the word has got the connotation it has got now.
Yeah.
And people keep pointing to FS to me with different R.D. Burman songs, and I say, yeah, this is great, but yeah, he's also done a lot of other things.
Or bhi hai, exactly. Correct.
Yeah. So that's always this danger, because I2FS is all about these inspired songs. And back then, there were a lot of people also took it probably with some kind of a noble intention that, yeah, I want this piece to reach a wider audience or whatever. Yep. But it's very easy for people to then brand these people, oh, they are cheats. They copied. Yeah. So, how do you actually address that? Again, this is a nuance. How do you address that?
Again, the same answer is that the line between I hate and love, it's so long. It's a spectrum. It is not two things alone. It's not just a dichotomy. It's a spectrum. There is so much more. You can hate a composer for one particular copy, and you can love that composer for another song which is not copied. Still, it's probably found to be copied, of course. And even then, you don't have to hate it. You can probably like both the songs, both the original and this, and you can also put it in your mind saying, if they had given credit, it would have been good. They didn't do it. Fine. It's okay. So what do you want me to do about it? I like this song. I like the original song. I like the copy version also. So big deal. What's the big deal about it? It's not personally affecting me. It's just some song and some other song. I like both. I see it as a more positive. I got two songs to love now instead of only one. And the more I listen to the copied version, the more I'm able to understand the composer's mind space. How did they think, saying, I heard this, let me change this, let me Indianize it that way. And I'm fascinated by the thought process. My most favorite example is A Whiter Shade of Pale, which inspired R.D. Burman for a song in Hindi. You need to check on I2FS, you will know which song it was for. It is so beautifully inspired. I get goosebumps when I hear the original and the Hindi version. I'm saying, this is brilliant, man. You should just given one credit. The whole song would have gone to the world saying, this is how we did it. It would have gone. So it's so sad, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't really need to get into value judgment all the time.
Absolutely not. You can like both. No problems at all.
Enjoy them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So coming to the next section, Karthik. So are there more challenges for women professionals and leaders when building a personal brand or when building social media?
Most definitely, yes. Particularly from an online space. For some reason, not for some reason, for most obvious reason, they get trolled indefinitely more than men. Particularly for women who are very assertive, who are very confident, who have actually, very good command over a language that they are writing in, and who have got very good qualifications, educational qualifications for very top positions. They get trolled as if they don't deserve all this, and which is just a very outdated kind of mindset. But that's the ugly nature of social media, partly because of the anonymity it provides. You can be an anonymous speck in a room with two people following you, or just a two-bit troll, and you can actually troll the highest, most qualified woman who's saying something very meaningful and purposeful, using all her experience and perspectives, and saying, you just reduce everything to saying, oh, you don't like that leader, that's why you're saying this. It happened very recently with Gagandeep Kang. It happened very recently because she just questioned the process of the vaccines, and people reduced her entire qualification and everything to, you have said something bad about Modi in the past. That's why you're saying all this. That's not the point. She can be this and she can be that also. As I said, it's a spectrum again. People don't get that spectrum. They linearly get into ones and zeros only. That's the problem. They just look at yin and yang and think if you're not yin, you're yang. If you're not yang, you're yin. Finished. That's the problem. And this gets far worse for women. Unfortunately, I have no words to say about how to deal with this. You can just be, I can say that you need to be confident and flow on, but that's easier said than done because it affects your mind. The more bad things you read in terms of response, you have some tools within Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn to block them, mute them, but unless you read them, you can't block them. And when you read them, your mind is affected. It is affected. We are human. Actually, I can say you need to be confident and you can ignore all that and move on, but it's just, even I am affected when I read those ad posts, so I can imagine what they will be going through. I don't have an answer to it at all. You can't just wish it away. It exists. We just have to live with it the hard way, unfortunately.
Right. And talking on the similar lines, are different apps, platforms, do they actually have in people's minds, do they have a different sense of proximity? For example, if you posted something on Twitter and people started arguing, trolling you, you probably may not, and I could be speaking about myself here, that you probably are going to be taking that less personally than say something that you posted on a WhatsApp group of say your classmates or some company. And because most people there, you take that more personally, that, oh, why is this person thinking like this? Is that true?
Actually, it's not platform centric, it's platform agnostic.
Okay.
My broad advice to anybody who's reasonably active on internet or just trying on internet is don't take anything personally from
Correct.
any stranger. If it is coming from somebody who you know and they know you at some level, whatever past level. For instance, even if you have chatted with somebody on Twitter in the past and then suddenly they ask something of you which doesn't seem to reflect on the earlier chat, then at least you have some reason to take it personally. If it's coming from a complete stranger who you have no clue who that is at all, don't take it personally. It's not personal at all because they don't know you at all to be personal. So absolutely don't take it personally. So it's not platform centric, it is people centric.
Correct.
And in most social networking, because it's happening between known people, you can afford to take something personally because there is prior contact between both. If there is no prior contact, move on, ignore it and move on. Yeah, say whatever, man, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
And Karthik, about the way you post, you've written in your book as well that you write something and then you look at it again, rephrase it, reframe it. Do you aim for a certain cadence for your blog posts and tweets? For example, do you post about an ad when you come across one, or do you look for one in order to meet, say, your target of posting? And some of the best ads that I have come across have been because I've been following you on Twitter. So how do you do that? So what's the secret to that, and what's your routine there?
It is both actually to some extent because I have put a cadence in my own head saying I need to blog every weekday. Every weekday I need to have at least one blog post in my blog. So I need to keep the blog fresh every single day. And because of that, I actually read a lot of stuff, whether it's on ads, whether it's on what's happening in PR, communications, marketing. I read a lot. And I get paranoid when I don't have enough thoughts in my head. So I want to fill more thoughts. I want to keep on assimilating them, thinking about them. If I don't have anything, I get very worried and I start watching Netflix, which is very passive. I'm just consuming. I'm not thinking at all. And
Right.
then I look for something on Netflix which will make me think so that I can write something. So it's always about I want to keep the spokes in my mind churning, not stuck with watching something, but keep on. So I keep reading a lot. And for instance, I generally don't impulsively write on something that's new. For instance, on the new Sabamed ad, I didn't write when it broke last Friday. I wrote about it only on Monday. I waited for it. I researched more, I read more, but I immediately wrote about it on Twitter and LinkedIn as a brief note. But a longer blog post came after about 2 or 3 days, after something happened and some response happened, and then you start writing about it. So it's not that impulsive at all. I always want to think more harder and at all. But sometimes it will be the reverse because something so big happens and I can't wait for it to share to the world because I have something specific to add. There is a nice perspective there, and I immediately go to it. But I don't write because I need to fit that one post a day. I usually have about 5 posts ready to post every day. For at least 1 week of content, I already have it ready. And I break that flow if something breaking comes up and then write something else kind of stuff. So for tomorrow's post, day after, I already have it ready. I don't
Right.
want to write about it today because it's
Right.
already ready and it's kitchen. So I don't wait. So I actually think like a magazine editor. What is going to
Right.
be my cover page next month? I need to keep it ready now. Otherwise, I can't work on it. I can't work at the last minute at all.
Yeah, I think that's a great. Anyone who hasn't read Karthik's book must read it. There's some excellent tips there about making sure that you don't fall into this bottomless pit as well. The one thing that really struck me was the 10-10-5-5 routine that you have. I think it's a great way of protecting your time as well and ensuring that you get the value that you want. So if you can quickly talk about that, it'll probably become a more compelling reason for people to go and buy that book.
Absolutely. The tendency survey is very simple. That's mainly for the working professionals, not necessarily for people who are individual or independent who can do a lot more. It is basically to have small pockets of time across the day, say about 10 minutes of time every 1 or 2 hours. It can mean it need not be exactly what I've written in the book. You can actually play around with the format and template on your own. It's basically saying 10 minutes before the end of every hour or before the end of every 2 hours in a day. Keep a calendar slot saying, I need to read, I need to read, I need to consume, I need to consume. 5 minutes of the day, I need to write something down, I need to make a note, I need to make a keep note. If you don't force yourself at a calendar level, you will never do it. You will think, Baad mein karenge, I will do it later, I will do it later, and that later will never come. It's like just bookmarking something, I will see it later, I will see it later. You will never see it because you're not making time for it. You need to make time for it. So it can even be 5-5-5-5. Have 5 minute slots across the day for 4 times or 5 times a day and put a calendar alert on your phone on your calendar. It needs to tell you this is the time to read. And then you don't start saying, what do I read? Because you have built your content pipeline. You go to the pipeline, say, start consuming right now. Have a 5 minutes and then read and then move on. Just cut it out and move on because you've got other work to do. It can even be 15 minutes a day across 4 times a day. Have that cadence. But the cadence needs to be calendarized. If you don't calendarize it, it won't become a habit. And if it does not become a habit, you can't be consistent. So it's all a chain actually.
I think that's a very robust and sustainable mechanism of actually operationalizing what we've been talking about. That's great. An under the bonnet kind of a question for you, Karthik. So as it happens with most, say, adoption of new technology and trends, it's usually the younger lot who are the first to pick up something. So how do you stay on top of the latest apps and latest trends?
I keep trying everything for just based on my own curiosity. How does it work? What does it do? What kind of new features they've added? It all depends on your curiosity. If you're curious, you will go everywhere. If you're not curious, regardless of what age you are, it doesn't matter. You just won't expand your mind or open your mind to get new information at all. All it requires is be curious. Keep questioning everything. Why is this working like this? What is new about this? What is the latest news about this? Keep questioning, and that curiosity will take you places, regardless of your age.
Right, but there are some trends and some apps which don't probably make their way to the kind of sources that you are looking at. So how do you make sure that you're on top of such trends?
There are many things I'm not top of at all. For instance,
Hmm.
Instagram, I joined only probably last to last year in maybe 2019 or 2018. I think 2019 I joined. Very late compared to the rest of the world, where the whole
Correct.
world is going gaga on Instagram. I did not join at all because I am not a visual first person. I am a
Hmm.
text first person, slightly
Right.
old worldish. I'm a text word first person. And for a word first person, Instagram was a very constricting kind of platform. It was not naturally suited to word first at all. It was naturally suited to visual first. So I had to really work hard of how to mold Instagram in a way that helps me and not in a way that is supposed to be used by the young people. I don't use it that way at all. I use it in a very corny, stupid way. That's what people can say. But it works for me, no problem at all. It works perfectly for me. I use it that way. But it took me so long to even join Instagram. I joined Instagram. I tried something. It didn't work for me at all. I completely dropped it. So most of the Instagram trends and topics and nuances, I had no clue at all. In fact, I still don't know many things at all. I just do whatever comes to my mind. But there are many things that I'm completely missing on Instagram because I have no clue that this is how this works. I'm supposed to like my own comments and whatever thing. I have no clue. I don't do it at all. I just use it like LinkedIn and Twitter, and it works for me so far. And I don't want millions of followers. The minimum 100, 200 followers that are following and finding value, that's good enough. One person commenting under my Instagram post saying, that was a fantastic ad, Karthik. Thank you so much for it. That's more than enough for me. I don't want thousands of people saying that at all.
Yeah. I think broadly speaking, the principles of how you use different apps and how you actually go about thinking about this, I think remains the same, and that is timeless.
Absolutely same. Yes, correct.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's come to the last section, Karthik, where we talk about future relevance. So I'll give you some terms, areas, words, and I want you to comment on what do you think is the future relevance of that thing. Okay. So the first, and quite a few of them are related to each other, but I want you to draw those nuances. So the first one is content marketing. What do you think is the future relevance of content marketing?
Very interesting question. I'm thinking from a Substack level because Substack is making a lot of news right now.
Right.
People are becoming independent content publishers more often because if you look at least 3, 4 years before or even before that, everybody's objective was to be featured in an already popular publication or already popular platform. I write for HBR, I write for Economic Times, I write for Forbes India, whatever it is. That used to be the objective. And that third party validation used to be the most important thing from a content marketing perspective. But now they are all trying to create their own newsletters, whether it's paid or free, it doesn't matter at all. They're building their own community in a way. Not a community instance, but they're building their own audience, which they can see saying 730 subscribers, 1000 subscribers, out of which paying. So I think content marketing is getting more and more individual, and as it actually gets more democratized, it's getting more individual and micro, and not necessarily people trying to ride on existing popular third party platforms. And because I am part of that, I have arrived. It is now this way also. You get your own micro. This is something that I've been doing since 1999 with Active quite literally, but without Substack as a thing. The only problem is, the only point is you just keep at it, doing it, whether you're doing it in a blog or Substack. But I think people are catching up to that now through Substack as a platform, and they're doing it. I see this more often even on LinkedIn. There are some people who are extremely consistent with the kind of content they write, and they are there. They show up almost every single day. They do it. Whether you call it as a Substack or LinkedIn, the objective is same. Be in front of people very often on a few topics so that people are able to relate those topics with you very strongly. That's the whole objective. But it's getting more internalized right now. And the one difference between Substack and LinkedIn is the content on LinkedIn is searchable. Substack is not searchable. So you need to join to be able to read the content. Without joining the community, you can't do anything at all. So I think it's getting more micro, but it's a good process. It is actually a good thing to have.
And what about apps like Twitter, LinkedIn? How do you see them panning out, especially with deplatforming of Trump? Every country is now thinking of alternative to Twitter. WhatsApp now has this brouhaha around Signal. What about the future relevance of these apps?
I think these apps will continue to stay. There might be better legal guardrails for not allowing something like Trump to happen for so long. And then towards the end, when he's trying to lose power or when he's almost on the verge of losing power, people come back to him saying, no, you can't do that. They should have done it long ago. But there were no guidelines to do. In fact, the guidelines are to do the opposite. Don't do anything at all. Those were the guidelines even from the US law perspective. And I think the legal guidelines would get more. In fact, I probably read it in Financial Times yesterday. Merkel had said, something like the German Chancellor Merkel had said that what happened with Trump with regard to Twitter and Facebook is wrong because those decisions were not taken by lawmakers, they were taken by private tech companies. She said, yes, you should take those decisions, but with the backing of the right regulations, by the backing of the law itself, and not individually on your own. So I think she has a point, and I think Europe as a whole is working much harder in that direction. If you notice, most tech companies have a much harder time in Europe and they pay millions of fines. They get terribly bad PR in all over Europe. But in US, they run completely amok and then pay a price much, much later. But in Europe, they're trying to do that. I don't think both have got the right mix, whether US and Europe. They're all trying, but US doesn't seem to be trying as hard as Europe. Europe seems to be trying much harder. And I think it needs more legal guardrails which are thought through based on common sense, not on partisan politics, but on common sense and a much longer thought. And I think they will continue to stay with those guardrails in place.
And what about digital data privacy in India?
I think it's running completely amok right now. You look at Aadhaar, you look at everything. There is no serious question about privacy regulations. There are things around the data privacy laws and clause and everything being brought about, but there are also a lot of loopholes. There are a lot of backdoor entries here and there which everybody exploits, and a few people talk about it. A few people talk about it in a very criticizing tone, and then few people from the government and actually talk about those who are actually criticizing as anti-nationals, and things go haywire completely. So we are probably not having the most serious right discussions on privacy. When we start doing it at the level of what's happening in Europe, maybe we will take it more seriously. At this point, we are actually in a free-for-all mode. It's almost like anything goes. You can do anything, you can do everything kind of stuff. In fact, I just read yesterday that millions of health records of Indians have been exploited in or of online. That's there. But it's being reported only in one small publication. Maybe after a week it will come in Indian Express and some people will take note of it. But after a week or two, it will also go completely. Nobody does anything about it. It needs to be codified. It needs to be discussed seriously in the parliament. Somebody has to take a call based on that. And for that, the media has to keep the pressure on it. But media has other priorities to keep pressure on. So that's the problem. It's actually a long process. It has to work. I don't think it's working well in India so far at all. It is being put on the back burner for other reasons and other causes, but we need to take it more seriously.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Next one is, I'm sure it's close to your heart, advertising. What do you think is the future relevance of advertising? You touched upon it in content marketing, yeah. But yeah, if you can just talk about advertising specifically.
From an industry level, it's here to stay. It has been there for ages and it will be here to stay. And it actually gets more creative because they try to exploit the existing tools in newer ways. And things will get more and more interesting once AR and VR comes into play. It has not come into play in a major level. It is still in a very minor level, and very few countries have exploited. Like Korea and China have exploited AR and VR to a reasonable extent, but rest of the world has not even started scratching the surface. Once they do it, the whole thing explodes completely, and so much can be done. It's probably the most exciting space to be in from a creativity point of view because there's so much possibility. Of course, there is good advertising, there is bad advertising, there is middling advertising, there is functional advertising. Everything exists, everything can coexist in the same thing. Some of them will be spoken about a lot, some of them won't be spoken about a lot. It's like any other industry that's there. But I think there is a lot more at stake in the future when newer technologies start playing up that one. At this point, we are still exploring very old world formats. Like words is a format we explore, visuals as a format we explore, videos as a format, and videos are 2D videos. That's the only thing we are exploring. Those are the three things. They are the basic tools of advertising that we are doing. And within those three tools, a combination of those tools is what we use to communicate our ideas to make people stop in their tracks and then say, oh, that's interesting. That's the reaction that we need. But once AR and VR comes in, it becomes so much more immersive. It's not just words, videos, and visuals. It's words, videos, and visuals that will affect us at a more visceral level because it goes into our eyes, it goes into our ears, it goes into our brain at a very different level. And that's going to be very exciting. It's going to be a very exciting time once that arrives. At this point, we are not there yet, of course.
Okay. And finally, the last one, Indian film music. What do you think is the future relevance of Indian film music?
I love it. I'm one of the biggest fans of Indian film music, and I generally say to people who think it's more fashionable to like Western music, pop music, Korean music, BTS, and everything, I said you are missing the gold here. We have so many languages, and so many languages produce so many film songs week after week. You're missing the gold here. And people say saying they copy, they are trashy, and etc. But I don't care. I love it. But I think it's bleak because more and more film directors are not seeing a value in music as part of the narrative. Those days are gone. With I think 70s and 80s and 90s, those days are actually going on the wane basically. Correct. Now it's going much faster. That the theme and the ways to actually make people sit based on a theme is more important. and that theme is not being articulated also in the form of music. Theme is being articulated only in the form of dramatization alone and scenes alone, not in music. Music is unfortunately being used only for advertising and promotion, nothing more. Which is I can personally call it unfortunate, but that's the way it is. That's the way market is evolving. I can't even name any song that was narratively meaningful to a movie that you can not watch and not get the movie at all. It's all just an extra fitting now, basically. So it is a sad kind of state that we are losing a specific genre of music because that's the most popular genre of music in India. Nowhere in the world it exists like this at all. We started it probably and we own this kind of genre. Everywhere else it's used very differently. Music is used very differently in movies. We use it as a very core concept, but even we are actually letting go of the thing. I won't review the fact that it's happening like this. It's an evolution. This too will change and we will probably change to something else. But I think the future is bleak for Indian film music, unfortunately.
On that note, Karthik, I'm just hoping that like how people pronounce the death of blogs earlier, and then there was Substack, vinyl records, and now it's picked up again. I hope your prediction here is not true.
Yes, I would love it that way if it happens.
And I can listen to more selections from Milliblog as well.
Absolutely.
I can continue to do that. So on that note, Karthik, it was a fantastic, almost 1.5 hours. Great talking to you. Great chance for me to pick your brains on a whole variety of topics. Thanks a lot for your time, Karthik.
Wonderful talking to you. In fact, I really appreciate the fact that you have done a lot of research about what I do. And when you mentioned AR and MP3, I was surprised. It is almost like 2.5 decades ago. And of course, I mentioned it in my book, of course. But still, to bring that up, I was very surprised. And this is probably the most detailed background research I have heard from anybody who has ever interviewed me. So, fantastic job. Really good job.
All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Karthik. It was a
Thank you so much,
pleasure
Harish.
and a
Thank you.
privilege.
Bye. Sure.